anyway, I figure there's a lot of people here that know, but I'm really quickly update anybody who's new to First Liberty, and then really what I'm going to try to do is give everybody an update on what's happening on a number of things, and then do a little Q&A at the end. First Liberty, if you don't know, is the largest legal organization in the country that all we do is religious freedom. So I could give you lots of examples, but the one that just happened yesterday, for instance, Mariah Bridges, who was chosen to give a speech at her graduation, and then she was told if she mentions Jesus, she's going to be punished. I mean, what do you do if you're a family like that? I mean, you go and say, well, we'll just, take out a loan for a couple $100,000 and hire a legal team and really represent our daughter and make sure that her religious freedoms. Well, because people can't do that, or they wouldn't do that if they had the money, we come in, represent them for free, and so that, they are able to live out their faith, and we are able to set precedent that then protects not just them, but our children, our grandchildren, and so that's kind of why we exist. How I got in this, back when I was in high school, I knew my gifts were in analytical thinking and speaking, and I thought, I either need to be a pastor or a lawyer. And, people said that was like a God or Satan choice, pastor or lawyer. And, and I looked at my DNA, and I realized I probably would do better at dispensing justice rather than mercy, so I'd probably make a better lawyer than a pastor. And went to law school, finished, clerk for a federal judge, and after you do that for a year, you kind of have a lot of nice offers from the big law firms because you know what it's like to be on the other side of the bench, that perspective of what's influential, what's over the line, you get that perspective. And so the law firms give you great offers. And I just felt like I'd suffocate if I went and did the regular law thing. And I remember thinking to myself in my little federal clerk's office, what do you want to do? And I said, I'd love to use my legal skills because I feel like the Lord's shown me I should do that, but I want to help pastors and churches and religious freedoms and our founding principles, and I'd even like to go to seminary. And I laughed because there was no job like that. And 2 weeks later, two guys called me, partners with major law firms. I never met these guys. They said, will you come to lunch? And I said, sure. And they said, look, we started donating our time for religious freedom. We're now getting so many calls that it's hurting our ability to make a living. And we were wondering, would you be willing to come on, head this effort, do legal cases, help pastors, churches, religious freedoms, and our founding principles, and you can even go to seminary part-time if you want. Now, being in my mid to early 20s, maybe a little immature in my faith, I said, let me pray about it, like that wasn't an answer to prayer, And the next morning I went, God kind of answered the exact prayer you asked, and I said yes, and they said how much you need to live on, and I was making $28,000 as a federal clerk. And these guys literally pitched in out of their pocket every month to kind of get me going. And 29 years later, First Liberty is now the largest legal organization in the country that all we do is religious freedom. And so it's a story, it's a God story. I think that applies to a lot of us. God will give us the desires of our heart. And He created us with certain gifts that He wants us to use for His kingdom if we'll walk in those directions and let Him guide us. But I look at it as God had every idea of what our country was going to need 29 years later. You could have never convinced me that we would be fighting any of the cases that we're fighting right now. I mean, we had 340-something cases last year. You could pick any of them, and I would have said, we will never have a case that radical. And now it's all we have. So God knew we needed to grow this thing. It needed to get big, and we needed to be able to fight all over the country. I had no idea how much we were going to be having to do. So I thought I'd start with some basics, which is, why is this important? I think as Christians, we automatically know religious freedom is important because we know that, look, if people's lives are going to change, they've got to hear the truth. They have to be redeemed. The only hope for the future of our country is for religious freedom to be here, right? But it even goes further than that. It goes to all of our freedoms. And so I want to show you a video because this is an example of a guy who doesn't even know the Lord, but yet understands how important what First Liberty does, and he's a supporter, even though he's not a person of faith.
If somebody told us that we were going to be crawling through barbed wire fences and escaping and moving across the ocean to America, everybody would have said, that's absolutely silly. That'll never happen. If they'd caught, let's say, a politician who opposed them, they put him on trial, but the evidence might have been presented, but the outcome was a foregone conclusion. So they had total control of you. That's how a dictatorship is run. My father was, first of all, very patriotic, had strong beliefs in democracy. The people that he helped were, if not friends, very good acquaintances. He knew they were going to get killed. So when he got arrested, my mother got arrested, and my brother, who was 8 years older, got arrested. So my whole family, except me, were in jail. Then my father would have been executed, but my mother managed to bribe the judge. He got sent to concentration camp in lieu of that, where he was, beaten, not fed. I mean, basically tortured. As soon as he escaped, his name was on the radio all the time, and as one of the most wanted people. There was a Secret Service sitting in our front hallway all the time. As you study history, one needs to be vigilant all the time, because you cannot take anything for granted. When you start losing freedoms, it is more than likely that it'll keep on chipping away. The opportunities we have, the ability to express yourself and do whatever you want to do and be able to achieve things without being blocked are unparalleled. The political correctness is ridiculous. I mean, it's just going too far. Defending the ability to have crosses or Christmas decorations just is getting to a point of absurdity. When I think about what was happening in Czechoslovakia at that time, there are parallels, because I think anytime you start taking away people's freedom, it just goes on. And you must take guard in the early stages as opposed to wait and let it all collapse when it's too late. Nobody expected communism in Czechoslovakia when it happened. It happened.
Up to me after a talk and said, look, I'm not a person who believes like you do. I'm not a person of faith, but I think that what you guys are doing is the most important thing that anybody's doing in this country. He said, I saw this happen in my country. They took down the religious symbols, they put up the secular symbols, and within 2 months, we all lost our political freedoms. And he said, so I understand the connection. And he said, he handed me a check for $5,000 and said, I'm going to be supporting you from now on. And every few months, we get a check from Peter. And here's a guy who doesn't even know the Lord. He just understands the freedoms. Sometimes I look at that and I think how often in our churches sometimes we think, well, I'll just do the Jesus thing and I'll just share the gospel and I don't need to be involved with government. Well, when Christians aren't involved with government, concentration camps and evil of unspeakable lengths is what happens. And so we've got to be involved in these things. And there is a connection to how people are treated in our society based upon how Christians are involved. So I just think that's a good reminder. So looking at that and looking at how, and the best way I can describe it is, we're called First Liberty Institute because our first liberty is religious freedom. Our founders talked about this. They said if you lose this freedom, this first freedom, you'll lose all your freedoms. And it's easy to understand why. I mean, if the government is a totalitarian government and they come into control, the one thing they can't allow are citizens who have an allegiance to one higher than the government. So whenever you see that type of totalitarianism coming into control, the first flashpoint will always be religious freedom. And that's why you'll see things like Peter's talking about. They take down the religious symbols, and the next thing you know, all your freedoms will be gone. So sometimes we look at some of these cases, these attacks on veterans memorials that are crosses, and we think, oh, what's the big deal? It's just a symbol or whatever. I mean, you start connecting the dots as to where this stuff goes. And so how are we doing? If religious freedom is so important, how are we doing? Well, I probably don't have to convince you that the attacks are worse than I've ever seen. I've been doing this for over a quarter century, and it's unlike anything. You've heard, we've had numbers of cases now where pastors have actually had their sermon subpoenaed by the government. One of them is Texas, right? One of them was one of our cases. We've got, I think we've got a picture of Audrey Jarvis. This is typical. Audrey, who was ordered by the head of a state university to take her cross necklace off because, quote, it might offend someone at the school. And we get that call for high schools, for all over the place. It's a constant. We just filed a case yesterday in the United States Supreme Court where you're going to think, oh, you got to be making this up. No, where a woman was actually ordered by police not to pray in her own home. Okay? And the Court of Appeals let them off because they said the facts were so outrageous that there'd never been a case like this before, so maybe they didn't know that they couldn't do that, so they get kind of a first bite, like a dog gets the one free bite. So they said they had immunity since this was the first time this had happened. So we're going to the Supreme Court and said, no, that's not the way things work. But I mean, we're having to fight a case over whether the police can tell somebody that they can't pray in their home, in their own home. So the stuff we're fighting, I mean, it's hard to believe. This is we do a little summary every year of all the attacks. We just collect, and there's like 5 a page here. I mean, this is everything from a 5-year-old girl who was told to stop praying over a meal because, quote, it's not good to pray at school, to the case with senior citizens who were told that their federally funded meals were going to be taken away because they're praying over their meals, and since they're federally funded, that would violate separation of church and state. So what you realize real quickly, you can look at this on our website too, it's how pervasive this is, how every age, every part of the country, every situation, and these are just the published ones. These are the ones that like made the case books or made the newspaper or whatever, so really this is just the tip of the iceberg. And so I thought, what's the best way to do this to kind of give you a feel real quickly and update you? I thought I'd take 3 areas and just give you maybe one example or so under each. First is sort of an area what we're real concerned about, which is going after people in their work. Because if you lose religious freedom in the workplace, if they control your checkbook and where you spend most of your waking hours, then you've really lost religious freedom. And so one of the cases that you're probably aware of, but and I think some of you have probably seen this video, but I want to remind you of the case because there's something I want to tell you about this. It's happening next week, about the Oregon bakers. And there's all these cases that we're now getting with Christians who are simply trying to run their business according to their faith, and they're being attacked. And this is one example. These folks, you probably heard, have been fined. They wouldn't do a gay wedding cake. And so they've been fined $135,000. They've been bankrupted. Their business is now over. They've been ordered by the judge not to say anything publicly about their beliefs about marriage. That's not a violation of the First Amendment. Anyway, but I just want to remind you the heart of Aaron and Melissa, and then I'll give you a quick update.
I've always been very artistic. It's definitely my passion. I put all myself, my heart and my soul into them, and then I step back and it's this beautiful work of art, and again, you get to eat it. So we dedicated our bakery before we opened our shop because we wanted everything that we did in our shop to be done to glorify the Lord, to put a smile on God's face. It was definitely a really good, booming business.
It was a normal day at the shop. She came in with her mom. I asked for the name of the bride and groom. She informed me this time the cake was for her, and it was 2 brides. I was apologetic. I informed her, I'm really sorry, we don't do cakes for same-sex weddings.
We served these 2 women in the past. We had a great time. When I do a cake, I feel a part of what these people are celebrating. For me to bake a cake for a same-sex wedding would fully go against what I believe.
About 2 weeks afterward, I got a letter in the mail from the Oregon State Department of Justice or Attorney General's office. We had to pay them $135,000. Nothing was off limits. Our vehicles, our house, everything was on the table for this judgment. Soon after that, we saw some of the worst things you can imagine.
We have 5 beautiful children.
We had people saying, I hope your kids get sick and die.
I mean, we lost our business. I always just thought that it was going to be a family business, that we would get to just have that for the rest of our lives. And you work so hard to build something up, and something that you've poured your heart into and was your passion, and to lose that has just been devastating for me, all because we couldn't participate in an event we had to lose our business over. Like, it doesn't make sense to me.
The government here is violating the Klein's constitutional rights, their rights to free speech, the free exercise of their religion, and their religious liberty. All Aaron and Melissa Klein want is the right to be able to run their business consistent with their faith. Instead, the government has destroyed their business in going after them personally.
We stood up for our faith. I mean, to me, that's like what's saying that was what we did wrong, is that we stood for what we believe. I do not regret it at all. God has drastically changed my life. And I am somebody today that is so different from who I was before. And the way I feel like with our business is that, like, I would give my business up in a second for him because of what he's done for me.
This time they went after the Kleins. If they can take their rights away, what's to keep them from taking your rights away? If the government can tell the Kleins that they can't live out their beliefs, they can come after any of our beliefs on anything.
Keep the Kleins in your prayers. They've been going through a lot, just incredible persecution in a lot of different ways. But this Tuesday, I'll be in the Supreme Court because a case very similar to their case is going to be argued. A baker from Denver has his case that's going to be argued, and I'm very concerned. I mean, we really need to be in prayer. A friend is arguing the case, and a group that I'm friends with, and I think it was a mistake for them to take this case right now, because if they'd have just waited, I think we'd have had enough change on the court where we would have been pretty assured that we would win. But with the court right now, the odds are heavily against us, but they went on and appealed, and the court took the case, and so most people would look at this and say 95% chance that this comes out the wrong way at the Supreme Court right now because of the justices on the court. So we really need to pray that God will change the mind of one of the justices, that God will change a justice if necessary between this argument and when the decision comes out, probably in June. But this is a really important case, and it's going to be argued Tuesday morning in the United States Supreme Court. So really keep that on your prayer list. But in addition to the attacks against employers, we've got a lot of employees we've had to represent. Toni Richardson was our most recent case. She was actually punished for telling a coworker at school who went to her church that she would be praying for him. That was, quote, unprofessional. A letter was put in her file. We've just settled that, and they've now taken the letter out, changed all that, back down. But I mean, they forced us to file a lawsuit. We went through all these rounds of trying to get them to back off. We've had a number of these cases with employees, but the good news is we've won every single one of these cases so far, but we're having to do a lot of these in the workplace where we didn't used to have to. Second area, a kind of quick update, would be schools. And the best example I can give you for sort of the microcosm of the battle in the schools would be the Coach Kennedy case. And I think most of you are probably aware of Coach Kennedy, guy who was in the Marines, 20 years, got out, and before he went into his coaching job, he saw this movie, Facing the Giants, and it just convicted him. If you've ever seen Facing the Giants, Christian coaches and team and all this, and he just said, Lord, I'm going to make a commitment. After every game, when we go to the 50-yard line and everybody shakes hands and does all that, I'm going to go to a knee, and I'm going to give you thanks for the privilege of coaching these young men. And so for 7 years, that's what he did, until the school sent him a letter and said, if you go to a knee again, we're going to fire you. And so he went to a knee, and they fired him. And now, Donald Trump has tweeted about his case twice. I mean, he's well known all over the country. And again, real quickly, because I think most of you probably have heard about Coach Kennedy, but if you haven't seen him up in person, I've got a 4-minute video that'll help you see a little bit of his heart, and we can talk about the battle that's going on.
It's ridiculous how attached you get to these kids, and not to be part of it, it's really rough.
High school football coach Joe Kennedy has been put on paid administrative leave.
Suspended. Booted from the program. His crime? Praying with his players.
And no matter what that score says, at the end of the game...
When it first started out, it was just myself. I first started just praying myself, giving, thanks for what the players just did and the opportunity to be part of it. And before long, it started being more and more kids. Our kids started inviting the other teams. Even our most bitter rivals were out there with us, which was really amazing. I just lift up both helmets, ours and the opposing teams, and I just say, I'd like to lift these guys up for what they just did. They battled for 48 minutes, and what started, as a war, we could all leave off, as friends.
During the game, we're enemies, but then he'd bring them together like for one big family. And it was just kind of like a huge impact on like all of us.
Then all the kids say amen and we walk off. It's a 30-second max thing.
I didn't view it as a prayer at all. He didn't say like anything like under God or anything involving like religion. He just kind of gave us like a post-game speech.
Just magical, because it brought everybody, even the other teams, back together as like just people, and it was awesome. This is what a team is about. At the end of the game, to come together.
He always had the right thing to say.
Nothing is ever required. It's what they want to do. My belief is my belief. I'm not trying to push it on anybody. Faith is a very personal thing for everyone, and it's just me giving thanks.
The school district is discriminating against Coach Kennedy on the basis of his religion, on the basis of his religious beliefs, and the fact that he is a Christian who desires to take a knee and give thanks at the end of a football game. We filed an EEOC action, that's the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. So that's a federal agency that handles cases of discrimination in the workplace. Discrimination could be on any number of grounds. In this case, it's religious discrimination.
I would love my job back. I mean, that's what I'm asking for, is I want to be the coach again.
He was such a big part of the team and big support.
Everything he does is from his heart. Everything is meant to like care for the kids. He's not meaning any harm to us, and he's not trying to like impact our religion or anything.
I spent 20 years in the military. This is definitely by far the hardest thing I've ever been through. I really had to just watch the game just like anybody else.
On senior night, for the kids that didn't really have parents that like supported them, we'd walk out with them and act as like their parental figure. It just shows the good man that he was and the good acts that he did for us.
I was going through some troubles at home with my dad, and he helped me, just sat me down, talked to me about how it's going to get better no matter what. I wanted him there because he was there for me.
It's not the X's and O's and winning football games. It's watching these guys overcoming the things that they go through in life and emerging as a stronger person because of it, and knowing that you get them for such a small time in their life and being able to be part of it. That's a blessing. That's what God called me to do, and I'd go through it all over again for them in a second, because I love these guys.
Example to me of how backwards things have gotten is this. I mean, this is the guy we want to kick out of the school system. This is a guy we beg for our kids and our grandkids. I mean, the atheist or the Seattle editorial writer said, look, I'm an agnostic, but if my kid was old enough, this is the coach I would want for my son. And this is the guy that we're now running off. Unfortunately, he lives in Washington, which is part of the Ninth Circuit. So we knew from the very beginning that we would end up going through the Ninth Circuit Federal Court of Appeals. If you don't know, the Ninth Circuit's the most liberal federal court of appeals in the country. It's in San Francisco, most overturned court in the country as well. They ruled in his case about a month ago that coaches were not allowed to pray in public as long as anyone could see them. Not like he was influencing the kids, because they admitted that he never tried to influence the kids or coerce them in any way. And what he was fired for at the end was going by himself to the center of the field after the game, going to a knee and saying a silent prayer for 20 to 30 seconds. And they said the point of law is coaches are not allowed to pray if anyone can see them, a spectator, anyone. They said he could pray in a closet. So prayer is the new pornography in the Ninth Circuit. And so we're definitely going above that court, and we knew we always would be, but a really important case. The last area I'd mention real quickly as an update is the military. And we've had a lot of cases. I think a lot of you have heard about the cases we've had with different people. I could go through all those. Chaplains we've had to defend. We've got people right now who are literally at the highest levels of our military who are some of the most important people in our military, even like, being in charge of our nuclear arsenal and things like that, who are being told their careers are over because they don't believe that marriage includes a man and a man or a woman and a woman, which should have nothing to do with their military advancement. But this is the kind of garbage that's going on, and really religious discrimination that's going on against people in the military that we are having to defend. So far, we've won every one of these cases. There's only one that hasn't been a victory. We're just having to fight more and more of these. But the examples I know a lot of people have heard about are the attacks on veterans memorials. Our first one was the Mojave Desert Veterans Memorial. It was put up in 1934 by the hands of World War I vets. And it was just a 7-foot lone cross in the middle of the desert with a plaque on the bottom that said, "For the dead of all wars," and sat there for 70 years until the ACLU brought a lawsuit saying you can't have crosses on federal property. Lost at the Federal District Court and Court of Appeals. They said, tear it down. And then we got involved on the way to the Supreme Court on behalf of the American Legion, the Military Order of the Purple Heart, the American Ex-Prisoners of War, VFW. And while it was on appeal, I think some of you have seen this, but this is what the court ordered to be done with that memorial. Literally, they ordered a bag be put around it with a chain and a padlock around the bottom. And, to me, that's a picture of what the other side would like to do. Now, some people say, why do you make a big deal about this? You won, true, the bag is off, the cross is back, that memorial is intact. But we won at the Supreme Court 5-4. And our deciding vote was Justice Scalia. And so we're one vote away from that being law. Well, now we're going to flip to the next one. This is the case. That's the highest case in the country. This is our Bladensburg memorial case. This is a memorial that was put up over 90 years ago, in part by money from mothers who lost their sons in World War I. And it's to honor 49 young men in Prince George's County, right outside of D.C., who lost their lives in World War I. And the American Humanists have filed a lawsuit to have it torn down. During the oral argument, one of the judges, we get 3 judges on the Federal Court of Appeals, asked the following question. If we just cut the arms off the cross, won't that take care of any of the offense? So we figured we might have a problem with this panel. The 3 judges on the panel, 2 were appointed by President Obama and 1 by Clinton. It was a split decision, 2-1, with the Clinton appointee saying, under no circumstances should this be declared unconstitutional. That's ridiculous. And the other 2 said, it's unconstitutional. Now, I want you to understand this Federal Court of Appeals, part of their circuit also includes Arlington National Cemetery. So if this precedent stands, they've got to go into Arlington Cemetery. There's a 24-foot cross there, the Cross of Sacrifice. There's the Argonne Cross, which is 10 foot tall. There's the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers that says, "Known but to God." I mean, it would not only, affect every community of every state of this country where there's veterans memorials, but it automatically and immediately affects Arlington National Cemetery. So we are in the process right now of appealing to what's called en banc, the Fuller 4th Circuit Federal Court of Appeals, and then we'll go to the U.S. Supreme Court. But we're not stopping until this is left alone. and hopefully that we can get a decision that protects all veterans memorials. But anyway, that's a quick update. Some of you are like, boy, thanks, Chad, for inviting the depressing Shackelford guy to our meeting. So let me tell you the good news, because there's really more good news, a lot more than you're hearing. The good news is we have a method of dealing with this, and it's what we've been doing for 20 years now. And if you look at the normal nonprofit legal organization, what they do is raise money, take that money to hire as many attorneys as they can, put them in an office in D.C. or New York, and then fly them around the country and cover as many of their cases as they can cover. That's not our model. Our model is there's all these people of faith who went to law school because they wanted to do what was right. They wanted to stand for righteousness. They wanted to kind of come in on the white horse and save the day. And 30 years later, these are the best litigators of the best law firms in the country, and they've done honorable work for their clients, but they've never gotten to do a case for their faith or their country. And so we sit down with those people and we say, look, if we give you everything you need, are you willing to give your time on one of these cases? And they're like, man, I've been waiting 35 years. Sign me up. And we know what's going to happen when we give them that case. For the first time in their life, all their talent, their gifts, their training is lined up with their faith, their love for their country, their love for the Lord. They've never felt that before. And so it's kind of unfair, but we now know we have them for the rest of their lives as one of our volunteer attorneys. And they're the big partners, so they give cover to the younger attorneys. They get to taste what it's like. So we've now done this long enough where if you were to go to the top 50 law firms in the country, you would find that a significant percentage of those firms don't just donate their time. They fight each other sometimes over who gets to donate their time. And the result of that is sort of twofold. Number one, for every $10,000 we spend, we get $60,000 donated in time. So it's an incredible leveraging of God's resources. But secondly is the win-loss ratio, which we didn't expect. If you watch the nonprofit world, you'll find that they'll win, they'll lose, they'll win, they'll lose. There may be 50-50. If they're really good, there may be 60-40. But we're the only ones that use this method, and our win rate for 17 years in a row now has been above 90%. And it's because when we have a case in Oregon, our attorney lives in Oregon. They grew up in that area. When they see the federal judge in that case, that judge maybe was in their law firm, or maybe they lost a tooth together in elementary school. They understand the jury in their area. It's the way every corporation practices law. If a Texas corporation and they have an office in California and they get sued in California, they do not send their Texas attorneys to California to do the case. They get the best law firms in California and they work with them. And we're the only group in the country that does that. And as I said, we're getting the best of the best. And so we should be winning over 90% of our cases. So the good news is if people are willing to stand up, we win. But you know what? If Coach Joe Kennedy is not willing to go to a knee and be fired, we've got nobody to represent. And so we can win these cases if people are willing to be faithful. And the good news is last year at this time, I think we had one case being appealed to the Supreme Court. This year, I think within the next month, we'll be at 6 on their way to the Supreme Court. So our caseload is increasing dramatically, and as I said, as we're winning. So I want to show you a picture. When we went national, we were a Texas group originally. About 5 years ago, these are the cases we had where we were just starting to go out of Texas and around the country. Now I want you to look 5 years later at where we are. Okay? And that's winning 90%. So the more of these we do, the more precedents we're setting, the more protections we're putting in place. And I point out, because people all get involved in politics, okay? Notice, it doesn't matter who's president, okay? We still win 90% of our cases. So I don't care who it is, we're still going to win these cases because the Constitution is still in place and the law still applies. So this is good news that you haven't heard of. The other good news is, we're doing these cases, doing our thing, and this guy gets elected that everybody's a little surprised by, this Trump guy. And so we had to reanalyze what opportunities are there now available for advancing religious freedom into the future that we weren't counting on. And we had like 200, opportunities that we came up with. And so, for instance, there were 120 judges' seats waiting to be filled for life by the president when he came into office. These are judges who will be on the bench for, maybe 30, 35 years. You think that'll affect religious freedom and the future of our country? It's now, by the way, over 160. And so, we went to the board and said, look, we've got all these new opportunities, but we got the same staff we had before all these extra opportunities came. What do we do? And they said, what's the new budget you would need just for the next 2 years? And it's like $4.5 million. And they said, well, let's see what we can do. And you know, I had one guy come forward with a big gift, and a number of my board members come forward, and they said, get started on this effort. And so we've now been through the first year almost, and raised about $2.3 million of the $4.5 million. And the impact is already incredible. I mean, this is going to be on the internet, right? Okay, so I got to be careful about what I say. But there was a Supreme Court justice chosen, and let's just say we were involved in the process, and somebody else was going to be chosen. And the fact that we ended up getting Justice Gorsuch is an incredible thing, because he is going to be an incredible justice. Probably has more well-written decisions on religious freedom than any justice I've ever seen on their way to the Supreme Court. As an example, 2 of our employees have been nominated by the president to be federal judges for life. These are the kinds of people that are going on to the court. Numerous of our volunteer attorneys across the country are being placed into federal courts of appeals right underneath the Supreme Court. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but the point is, people are going on to into these judicial positions that will never turn their back on the Constitution, that will always be faithful, that are the type of people you know you can trust and are of impeccable character, and talk about making a difference. These are people that are going to be there when our grandkids go before the federal court, you know, 30 years from now. So you're not hearing about a lot of this stuff, but I'm just telling you, a lot of people that would be in this room are now becoming federal judges for life. They're going into places of the government and setting policy on religious freedom that's going to be in place for decades to come. So there's a lot of things you're not hearing about. So I would just say, you know, and the way I look at it is, we've got a window of opportunity. I don't know how long the window is open. Usually our look is a long-term look. Winning the cases, sometimes it can take 9 years, 10 years to win a major case. For the first time in my entire career, and I've been doing this for a long time, I feel an urgency. Because there's a window open right now for these types of things, and it could be closed as early as a year from now, right? If the Senate changes, you can't confirm these types of judges. And so all I know is I've got another year. And so we are doing everything in our power to move as fast as we can. And I think there's a parallel with that with the body of Christ. I think whatever you think of Trump, whatever, he's kind of blown a hole in political correctness. And people are allowed to, yeah. And I think people are allowed to say things now and be more honest and open about things. And I think that includes sharing the gospel. I think that includes talking about Jesus. And I don't know how long that window is open, but I know it's open now. And so I look at it as God has given us a window of opportunity, but that's what it is, a window of opportunity. But we have to be faithful. And so that's where I see us now. I think it's an incredibly encouraging time from what I'm seeing, but we can't sit on our rear end and think, oh, right, things are really good now. It's like, no, you've been given an opportunity to advance the ball, but we still have to advance the ball. So anyway, I hope you'll be encouraged by a lot of that, and I know I'm sort of at the end of my time, but I want to take questions if we have time for any questions, and if we need to go over, people need to leave, Chad, you let me know, or whoever. Yeah. Yes. Well, there's lots of battles going on in Texas. Look, places that were traditionally more conservative, more whatever, are under assault now. Yeah. Well, it might be a little bit of an outlier because that's where we started, so people are more aware. The biggest problem, I think, is I bet for every case we get, there's 10 where people said, well, I can't afford any attorneys, so I'm just going to let this happen. And they let it go. Here. No. Exactly. And the reality is it's in everybody's backyard. If you see something in one of our cases from Illinois, 95% chance that same thing is happening in your school district or your community, and nobody is paying attention. So that's why I say it's just the tip of the iceberg. So there's all these people who need to be faithful and rise up. And a lot of times, what I see a lot of times is something happens in a community, everybody kind of looks around, one person stands up and says no. And when they do, the entire community walks in behind them. But it takes the person that's willing to stand up. And that's why I say we have an opportunity, but we've got to take advantage of the opportunity that we have. Oh, and by the way, I think we've put cards on every table. I know a lot of you are already getting our information, but if you're not, we don't share your information with other people. We're happy to put you on. If you'll just fill out one of these cards. Don's here, Don Spack. Just give one to Don before you leave, and he'll make sure you get on the list. And Don I'm out of town a lot, so Don keeps everybody updated. So if you ever want to meet with Don or whatever, he's happy to keep you updated on what's going on, fill you in with info. But fill out a card. We'd love to get you on the list so you can share this information with other people as to what's going on. All right, other questions? Yeah.
How would you summarize what's going on the abortion front?
Well, on the abortion front, I would summarize it as, things are moving in an incredibly positive direction for people who are pro-life. Number one, the president has made a pretty strong commitment on that issue. A lot of the pro-life groups are sort of, involved heavily with what's going on in D.C. right now. When you appoint justices like Neil Gorsuch, who believe strongly that judges should interpret the Constitution and not make law, the chances of things like Roe v. Wade, which is not in the Constitution, being in place in the future dramatically reduce. So, for instance, if you were to change one more justice, you'd probably have the overturning of Roe v. Wade, which nobody, I think, thought they'd ever see again. But, now, would that mean that the battle is over on that? No, it would just mean the battle would return to the states and people would decide, do we want, abortion or not? But, yeah, the stuff happening on the abortion issue is pretty dramatic, and there's stuff happening almost every day. And, it was a heavy commitment. I mean, I don't know how many of you remember the last debate with Hillary Clinton, when that question was asked about an abortion in the final trimester. And there was a huge, crevice between the two of those. And it shocked a lot of people and made that a very highlighted issue. But Trump put a very strong stance on one side, and Hillary Clinton took a very strong stance on the other side. So I think some dramatic stuff happening there. But to me, the biggest issue are the judges and what that'll mean. Yeah. The Johnson Amendment is an amendment that, how do I quickly summarize this? There is a law in the tax, or a regulation in the tax code that tells nonprofits that they're not allowed to really do things that really churches don't want to do, which is, as a nonprofit, you can't, on behalf of your nonprofit entity, endorse or oppose one candidate over another in an election. And you can't lend your resources to one candidate over another. That's what the law really says. I don't know any churches that want to say, First Baptist Church of, blah and blah, Texas, endorses candidate so, or it says, hey, we want to open our church coffers and give money to one of the candidates. So usually this is not a problem, but there's a lot of fear because of this that scares a lot, where a lot of churches and people censor themselves unnecessarily. And so there's people that want to get rid of this because really it's no business of the IRS what a church says or does. And so they're trying to get rid of that, at least in its application to churches. The update is that it actually may be a part of the tax bill that's about to pass. They're actually putting in some provisions, and it might be that provision is slipped in to take care of the IRS situation, which we'll see. But there is an effort there. The good news is, even if it doesn't get passed or done, and he made a commitment to try to do that, really, this is not something that should worry churches. They're just misinformed, and they get intimidated, and therefore they censor themselves when they shouldn't.